Alright, good afternoon. Last video we went through the yellow blocks, so we did a snake chain running through, and the video before that we did the orange cylinders, so now we're going to work on our red cylinders. So we're going to do this a little bit different than the other ones. The other ones we've been doing offsets to jump us over. Now we're actually going to do direct manipulation of the point of where our first cylinder is, and we're going to directly change that point to the next point, and then we're going to move it up and down. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy yellow offset so that I have all my headings so that I can change things. So I'm going to go back to my select, and I'm going to copy, and I'm going to change it to our red offset. Yes, I want to copy. And let's go find it. Here's our red offset. Let's go into it. Alright, so we're going to user frame number 1, tool frame number 1, so we're good on that. We are going to still count. We do not need a direction anymore, so I'm going to delete this out. And we are no longer going to change a registry. We're going to actually set our first registry for our first point. So our first point is going to be at 300 and negative 300. So we're going to go point registry. Let's go to that data. So let's go data, and here's our data positions. We want to make sure that we are in the position registry. So we're in position registry. Red cylinder, let's inside the red cylinder, so we go position. And we are at 300, negative 350, and then negative 230 to put us at that first initial cylinder. So we're going to do a direct axis and modification of this. But before we change anything, we want to make sure that we are initializing this at this position. So I'm going to go back to my program, and let's initialize that. So it was number 4, which is our red cylinder. So position register number 4, we're going to set our X component, which is number 1, and we're going to set our X component to 300. And then we're going to use position register number 4 again, and we're going to set the Y component, which is number 2, and then we're going to set that to negative 350. So that initializes that first home position, and then let's also make sure our Z component is also correct. So I'm going to go new instruction, and I'm going to go register, set equal to, point register, and we're going to use number 4, which is our red cylinder, and then number 3, which is our Z component, and our Z component is going to be negative 230. So we have those initialized. Then what we do is add a few lines here. Alright, so now what we're going to do is, because we want to go to a safe position, because we're going to use our point registry, we want a safe position of 100 up. So we're going to use another point registry. So if I go to here and point registry number 7, I'm going to record this. So it's recorded. And then I'm going to go name it. And so I'm going to do my Z offset. I'm going to call this set. So my Z offset. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go inside there. So shift, position, and then we're going to clear all these. So 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So once we have them all cleared, now let's set that Z position to 100. So we're going to bring it from our position, our point registry at the bottom, and we're going to move it up 100 millimeters. And you'll see more how this works once we actually start programming. Let's go done, edit, and then let's make sure that it stays that way. So we're going to go new instruction, registers equal to point registry number 7, and we're using the Z-axis offset, which is number 3, and we're going to set that equal to 100. So now that we have all our variables set up, Now let's start going to our actual program. So the home position is good, the label position is good, the jump label is good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to our first position, so our joint movement to our safe position. So if you remember, our number is position number 4, point registry. So we go in here, choice, point registry number 4. So we're going to there very quickly, and then we're going to do a offset, which is the number 7. So we're going to change this to number 7. And that's our Z offset. Then we are going to linear down to position register number 4 with no offset. So we're taking the offset off of this. So we go choice, no options. So we have the offset, then we turn off the offset, and then we turn it back on again. So basically it's the same point, but we're just offsetting it up and down. So right here is our next point. So we're going to use position register number 4, and we're going to turn on the offset to number 7, our Z offset. So it's basically going to go down, go up again. So let's try this out, see how this works. So initialize everything, goes to home view. Alright, so then it's going to come down to the position register plus 100. Then it goes to position register number 4. And then it goes position register number 4 plus 100. So basically we did only one position, but we just offsetted it so that we can go to our safe position. So that's another way of doing an offset. So let's just go up here and rename this so that is the correct item. So red cylinder. It's now named. So let's go down to line 23, which is our change position numbers. So let's do our count. So I'm going to actually delete this line. There we go. So we're going to do our count is equal to count plus 1. So we add 1 to our counter. Then what we're going to do is we're going to add 1 to our position register red cylinder, and we're going to now subtract 100 because this is going to be negative 100 and then 200 over. Okay, so let's go in here. So let's add a new line, and then let's go new instruction, registers, and we're going to do negative 1 because we're going backwards. So I'm going to go position register number 4, which is our red cylinder, and we are going to change the X component, which is number 1, and then we are going to make it so that we are taking the original from red cylinder X component, and we are going to subtract 100 from it. There we go. So we go from 300 to 200, which will bring us to this point right here. Okay? So 200 back. Now we need to go left and right, and we need to make a decision based on that. Okay, so if I go down, and we get rid of these if statements. Actually, what I'm going to do is just get rid of everything down here, except the home view. There we go. So now I'm going to just insert a bunch of lines. So we'll start with 15 here. Alright, so now that we have our position registry changed for negative 100, because we're going to constantly go back 100, now we have to decide what side we're going to go to, left or right. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at our counter number, and we're going to make a decision based on that. So if the counter number is even, we're going to go a certain number. If it is odd, we're going to go another number. So we're going to make two decisions, okay, which is going to be based on whether we go left or right. But the first decision we're going to make is whether our counter is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So let's go new instruction, and let's do a counter. So if our counter, which is register number 1, is equal to constant 7, then we are going to jump all the way down. So we're going to leave this as we're going to jump to label 4, we'll say, because we're going to have this one is going to be jump to label 2, this one is going to be jump to label 3, and then this will be jump to label 4. So just kind of thinking ahead, I'm going to go jump to label 4. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put label 4 right before my home view and then the end. So I'm going to insert and I'm going to go label 4. So label 4 will jump us out of the program, goes to the home view, and then ends the program. Okay, so once we have that, now we're going to make the decision of which direction we're going to go to. So we're going to do something called a mod. So let's go to the mod number. So basically a mod or modulus is if I take any number and I mod it to 2, if the outcome is 0, that means it's an even number. So basically what it's doing is it's dividing by 2, dividing by 2, dividing by 2 until it gets to 0. If the number is 3 mod 2, that means we can divide by 2, but we have a remainder of 1. So if you ever get a remainder of 1, that means you have an odd number. So let's first do the calculation to see whether we get a 0 or 1. So let's go new instruction, registers, and we're going to go down to right here where it says mod. So right here we're going to set up a new register. So we'll go register number 4. Exit. So let's actually set that up now. Let's go to data, and we're under data registers. If you're not, just go to registers, and let's call this one mod. And we're going to just set that equal to 0 for now. Okay, so then I'm going to go to my data here, where mod, so setting that up. So if the mod shows as a 1, that means it's odd. If it shows up as 0, that means it's even. So let's go, our item is equal to the register number 1, which is our counter, mod 2. Okay, so that means it divides by 2, divides by 2, divides by 2, until it gets to 0. So if it has a remainder of 1, that means it's odd. If it has a remainder of 0, that means it is even. Okay, so if I do, say, if we're on step number 4, so counter number 4 is equal to number 4, mod 2 is 0. So it sets my register number 4, which is mod, to 0. If it's number 5, mod 2, so 5 divided by 2 gives us a remainder of 1, which will give us a mod number of 1. So now we can make a decision based on that 1 or 0. So we can go new instruction, if statement, if equal to, if our register number 4, which is our mod, is equal to 0, which means it's even, we're going to say jump to line 2, jump to label 2. If our mod register is equal to 1, we're going to jump to label 3. Okay? So that's why I put label 4 up here, which is the end. Just kind of keep things. It doesn't matter if you make this 2 and it goes to Hugh. It's just, it gets out of order, but it still works. So we have our if statements. Then what we're going to do is actually make the label. So right here, I'm going to go new instruction, and I'm going to label 2. So then there's my label 2, and then here's where we actually set our register to be the correct variable. So I'm going to go new register, and we're going to set equal to, because we're changing the actual red cylinder point register. So I'm changing point register number 4, which is our red cylinder, and we are moving it so that we're going to the left, which is the Y component, so number 2. So we're changing number 2, which is the Y component, and we're going to move it to the left to position negative 350. So our starting point is negative 350. So we're setting it equal to 350. Here's our 350, because remember that this is actually 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're starting at 350. So then, once we have it set to 350, we're going to now jump back to label 1, which loops through. So new instruction, jump label to 1. Okay, so that jumps back to the actual program itself. So let's do the same thing for label 3. So let's go new instruction, label, label 3, and new instruction, registers, and we're going to go equal to position register IJ, number 4, which is our red cylinder, and we are going to change our Y component. So if it's odd, then it's going to go over to this direction, which is the center point is negative 550. So I'm going to go constant negative 550. Okay, so we're going to positions. We're not changing offsets. Okay, so that's where it's very different from the previous one. So here, so we're going to position. This one was 300, negative 350. Then what we're going to do is we're going to add negative 100 to our X component, and then we are going to go to negative 550. Okay. So this is going to be 200, negative 550, and when we run through this, you'll actually see those numbers. We'll go through it step by step so you can actually see that. Okay, so once we have our jump label, let's set up our one modulus to make sure it's at 0 right away in the beginning, but we'll try it right after this. But we need to add one more jump label here. So let's go new instruction and jump to label 1. So it's doing the exact same thing as this, but it's just setting our X component. So it's going X component negative 350, X component negative 550, the Y component. Y component negative 350, Y component negative 550, negative 350, 550, negative 350, negative 550, negative 350. So it's just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So let's go shift up and let's do one more variable here. So I'm going to go right up here and I'm going to add one more line. And so new instruction, and I'm going to go register equal to, so I'm going to do register number 4, which is our mod, and we're going to set that equal to 0 in the first initial point. So I always like to initialize everything to the starting point. Alright, so let's actually try this. So I'm going to go shift forward, and I'm in step mode. Go through, it resets my starting position to the 300 and negative 350 and negative 230. So it goes to home position. Then it goes down to my first initial point, which is that point, with the offset of 100, no offset, with offset. Goes down, and then what it's going to do is add one to the counter. Then it's going to add one to the cylinder, okay, which is the X component of the cylinder. So if you remember what the X component was, it was 300. So this position is 300. So if I go to my data, I go type, position register, and I look at my red cylinder position, notice it says 300, negative 350, negative 230. Now watch what happens once I go one more line. So I go back to the edit. So I go shift forward. So now it passed this line. So let's go back to that data register. Notice now it says 200, negative 350, negative 230. Okay, so it changed that first part right here, that X component. So we're going to go back 100 millimeters. So it went from 100 to 200. So then let's go back into our program, and now we're going to go down, and we're going to, if it's count to 7, then we jump to the end, which it's not. It's going to do the mod number. So let's actually look at that mod number. Let's go data, and let's go type. Mod is going to be 0, so that means it's going to be an even number. Okay, so it goes to label 2. And then it jumps to my position. So it jumped me weird when I was actually doing jumping between data and forward, but let's actually just run the program and we can see if it actually runs the way it's supposed to. So I'm going to go run, goes up, so it goes down, so 350, 550, 350, 550, 350, 550, and it's incrementing negative 100 in the x component every single time it goes down. So jumps between 350, which is this one, to 550, 350, 550, 350, 550, 350, and it jumps down in the x component of negative 100 every single time it does that. So negative 100, 550, negative 100, 350, negative 100, 550, negative 100, 350. So it keeps adding that negative 100. So by the time we get down to this position right here, we have subtracted 7 100s from the original position of 300. So we should actually get negative 300 when we get to the end here. So let's go to position here. So let's go data, and let's go to the position registry. So I'm going to go type position registry, and let's go into the red cylinder's position, and notice how it says our x component, which is our negative 400, and then 350 is our position register for our point number 4, which is our red cylinder. And the reason why it's negative 400, not negative 300, is because before it exits out of the actual program, so if I go back in here, before it actually does that last exit, it subtracts another 100 from that. So if I go back down here, so right here, before it goes through here, so it goes, alright, so now the count is 7, but it subtracts another 100 from there, and then it exits out. So if we didn't want to subtract that 100, we could easily put this if statement right here, okay, before it subtracts that another 100. So if you want to really modify it to get what it's supposed to be, we can easily just do that just by going in here, and we go copy cut, select, cut, and then if I go right after my count, I go paste position. Okay, so now it does it before it makes it 100. So if we run this again, now we should get the negative 300 as our final position. So let's go back into that program, shift up all the way, and let's run the program and see if it did the correction. But it reinitialized that first initial point to be right here because that's how we initialized it. There we go. Now we move up to that position. Alright, so let's go into data and red cylinder. Let's go to position, and notice how it says negative 300 because it did not subtract that 400. So that's just another way of changing the actual numbers. Instead of doing an offset, you're actually modifying the actual number itself.